A brilliant school career, traveling between orphanage and Hogwarts, and an urn containing the ashes of his parents. Who is Grim Folly, and what could he be hiding in his past that would make him start the Calamity?
We don't know. All we got are suspects. My job, find out who.
Hey there everybody, my name is Zoe, this is Snitches and Witches, and welcome to Stoyline Saturday, the series where we take a look at all of the storyline behind Harry Potter Wizards Unite, do a deep dive into some of the research, and take a peek inside my Calamity journal. I swear to God, if I don't get something to decode soon, I'm gonna lose my mind. This week we are taking a look at Chapter 2A, otherwise known as Grim Folly's background. This is where we kind of take a look into Grim Folly's past and find out a few things about him. Okay, really quick, we're gonna recap what we know so far because we've covered a lot of ground. So obviously the wizarding world is facing its greatest threat since Voldemort and Grindelwald, with the very existence of witches and wizards being threatened every single day. Artifacts, memories, and creatures are being pulled out of space-time and scattered through the world in plain sight of Muggle eyes. Unpaid volunteers comprise the department, which is now known as the Statute of Secrecy Task Force, and they are responsible for returning these fragments to their own time so the Muggles are not aware of the wizarding world. The theory is that the perpetrator of this is a gentleman by the name of Grim Folly, but do not get too attached to that. The theory on why Grim would cause such a disruptive event, because his wife was part of a group known as the London Five, who were 5 witches and wizards who disappeared simultaneously from all across London at the same time. The London Five investigation was closed abruptly and without much warning, much to the dismay of all of the families of the people whose loved ones had been taken. It's theory that the Calamity is a revenge plot against the Ministry. Okay, so last chunk of the chapter, we found out that Grim had Nell's scarf and was hanging on to it and obsessing over it. Gareth is creepy. The council refused to listen to the appeals made by Grim, and Grim does not want his children to turn out like him. Why? Well, we're gonna find out this week. His children's name are Melody and Addison, and it's possible they could both be of age to go to Hogwarts, but we don't actually know. We have no word on either of the kids, and this is concerning to me. I want to know where the kids are. Because as we're going to see from this particular chapter, both of Grim's parents are deceased. And it sounds like Nell's parents are nowhere around either, so who's taking care of the kids? So those are the facts as we know them right now. We're gonna dive into the second chapter of the story, Chapter 2A, Grim Folly's background. We're gonna start with the wedding announcement, which is in that Daily Prophet with Dolores Umbridge as the front page. I'm finding that kind of interesting. Daily Prophet dated June 2006. Miss Penelope Paget and Mr. Grim Folly were wed this past Sunday in West Bromwich. Both Paget and Folly work within the Department of Magical Law Enforcement at the Ministry of Magic. Attached is a picture of Penelope and Grim. Penelope is enthusiastically kissing Grim's cheek while he blushes and looks away from the camera. Grim is pleasant but painfully quiet. And Penelope was, well, ambition's always been a priority amongst Slytherins, hasn't it? You trying to say something, Connie? You trying to start something? And then suddenly they had 2 children. I love that photo in the Prophet. They look so happy. All right, so she says suddenly. So I'm guessing Melody and Addison were born fairly quickly after the wedding, probably within quick succession of each other. So we can assume that the older of the 2 was probably 2006 means 14. So 14 and 13, 3rd and 4th years respectively, depending, but we still haven't heard anything. Like, you'd think McGonagall will be like, by the way, kids are fine. So Lynette has already done a video breaking down all of this. So if you want to go check that out, the link will be in the description down below. She's done a whole video on the timeline. So Constance is kind of weird. She acts like she doesn't really like Nell. In fact, she acts like she doesn't really like Slytherins. Or maybe she's just gotten run over a few times, too many by Slytherins. Sorry. A handwritten note in Grim's handwriting addressed to Penelope. I've always been the one on the side, looking in on everyone else's adventures, but you're right, I have a lot to offer. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to apply to be an unspeakable. You've got me convinced. I am bloody qualified. It's time to get in the game, right? It's time I had an adventure of my own. When he told me he was going to apply for an unspeakable, I thought it was brilliant. He was perfect for it. I knew Penelope well, and when she mentioned it, I thought she was daft, but then I thought about it. Okay, I know I get on Gigi a lot, I understand, but past tense. I'm just saying, it's an interesting use of past tense here. You're talking about her like she's dead, bro. Grim Folly has more magical talent in his little finger than most of us do in our whole bodies. He was a fit. So to put this into context, he was a second year when the Battle of Hogwarts happened. So he was one of the kids who was sent down to the dungeons to hide. He had to watch from the sidelines as his mentors, as his friends, as his colleagues all died at the hands of Death Eaters voluntarily. But because he was so young, he was underage, he couldn't participate. So even Greengrass is admitting, yeah, he was really, really talented. Even though I couldn't see it, it was there. And we're gonna see more of this talent here in a second. If you look at Grimm's school record, a listing of Grim Folly's achievements as a student at Hogwarts probably once attached to his CV. It details Folly's excellent work as a student, receiving 5 outstandings, one exceeds expectations. That's like all A's. Grim Folly was an outstanding student, a Hufflepuff through and through. He applied to the Ministry's research wing. If I recall correctly, I wrote him a glowing recommendation. Big G doesn't do that for everybody. You can tell this kid is good. We're very happy to welcome him into the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. He had qualified to be an Auror if he wanted, but I think he preferred more academic problem solving. Then he meets up with Nell, and suddenly he's got a little bit of a reckless streak, and he's trying to he wants to do more, so he applies to be an unspeakable. This is listed. A small silver locket, slightly tarnished from wear. On the side of the locket is an inscription: "My strength, my heart, my life. G and P." I remember the two of them were very private about their relationship at first. It was a bit scandalous, actually, a workplace romance. Penelope was older than Grim, several years, if I recall. It's like 3. It's like 3 years, Constance. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. But it turns out they were both more compatible than any of us gave them credit for. I don't like Connie being like, it's scandalous. She was 3 years older than him. Screw you. Grim's suitcase. I apologize for kind of blasting through these. It's more just background, and it's more buffering up the stuff that we've already talked about. An old tattered suitcase, the leather on the edges scuffed down to reveal stretched canvas underneath. The worn nameplate on top of the case reads GM Folly. What is the middle name? What is the M? I want to know what the M stands for. The case is empty inside. Grim never talked much about his childhood. Can't imagine what it must have been like living in orphanages. Seems like a horrible way to grow up, but he never seemed affected by anything until he lost Penelope. I don't know what this is. This whole chapter is just like, look, he's a bad man. And it doesn't click. You know, it doesn't quite click. The Folly Urn. A porcelain urn covered in a thin layer of dust. The lid is slightly chipped, with an inscription: Lucretia and Marshall Folly, loving mother and father. Mr. Folly's parents were killed during the Second Wizarding War. He was a student at Hogwarts. He was in my Transfiguration class. He was a second year when we were forced to defend the school against Voldemort. He was too young and was sent away. I've always feared he had a very personal lesson in the horrors of war. That's all of the fragments we have from this. It's a very, very quick chapter to roll through. Let's just recap real quick. So, Grim is an orphan. He was orphaned at 12 years old, 12 or 13, depending on what side of school year he fell on. He traveled back and forth between Hogwarts and an orphanage, working really hard. He got really good grades, and he was able to get into the Department of Law Enforcement. He qualified for Auror, decided he didn't really want to. Meets Penelope Paget, falls in love. They have apparently scandalous workplace romance. 3 years is not a huge age gap. But Nell was his superior. It's a completely different barrel of monkeys on acid when it's superior versus a subordinate. I understand that. That's 100%, but it was scandalous, apparently. Suddenly, he is hanging out with Nell. They have 2 kids. They're very happy. And Graham is just like, screw it, I want to have my own adventures. I'm sick of being on the sidelines. He's getting a little reckless, but it's not like he immediately goes into being a dark wizard catcher. No, he goes into being an unspeakable, where they're doing more risky research. He wants to have an adventure of his own flavor. So it's all within character. If there was an Imperious Curse used on Grim at any point by Nell or Greengrass or anybody, I don't think it was at this point. because this is still within the parameters of normal behavior for him. Who started the calamity? As of right now, it's still looking like Grim Folly. They are so hard trying to push us towards it was grim, it was grim, it was grim. And still don't get too hung up on that idea. Why did the calamity start? If it was Grim Folly, it's because he was so distraught about his wife missing. He was trying to use a spell to go and find her, and it might have backfired, which seems incredibly unlikely considering the fact that he was a straight A student. And how do we stop the calamity? That's still unclear. If we do stop the calamity, it's probably gonna have to require finding Grim so we can start untangling whatever knots he's tied up. I don't think that's the case, especially with the way that the current Brilliant events are going. We're gonna have to talk about Brilliant events very, very soon. I swear, once we get through like the mysteries we have, then we'll start diving into the Brilliant events, and we're going to take those fairly quickly. Here's our suspect list. Still, it hasn't changed from last time. We're still working with kind of the same batch of people. But if you want to know more about all of this, make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe for more, because I'm going to keep covering for this for as long as I don't get completely pissed off with them breaking their promises, because I want this to be an ARG. I want more stuff to decode. Give me more images that have hidden text files in them. If we get anything, you know your girl is gonna be super excited about all of that, so you should hang out with me. I do appreciate you hanging out with me today. I wanna say a big, huge thank you very much to my patrons. These are all of my patrons on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel, keeping the lights on. It allows me to do stuff like make butterbeer and do other really cool things with the channel. So I do appreciate your love and support. If you want, you can go ahead and join the Discord down below, or you can also click on that Patreon link. Okay, bye.